Namaha, namaste. Welcome. I'm Vasanthi. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I thought we could explore a tool that is very simple yet very powerful to help you connect to the most intimate part of you that is within you, yourself. The greatest relationship that we can have in this life is this intimate relationship with the self, to know who it is that is having this experience and to become the best version of ourselves so that when we connect inward and know who we are capable of connecting outward and being of service. So one of the things that often get in our way of developing this intimate relationship with the self is us. We stand in our own way. We become the obstacle. Think about relationships you've had, relationships with family, with friends, with neighbors, with coworkers, any form of relationship. You have given a lot of effort and work into those relationships, right? And you continue to do so for many of them. You tend to give energy and nourish them because you know that that's essential in maintaining that relationship. Well, we do all this effort for these other relationships, but then forget to turn that mirror to look back at the relationship that we have with ourself, that most intimate part of ourself. And what often stands in the way is our inability to communicate with ourself. Two areas that help us communicate are our mind, the manas, and our area of center of being, our heart center, hridaya. And these two often need to communicate and they need to hear one another. Just like in relationships you've had, they both need to be heard, they both need to be seen with value, and they both need to be respected. And that sometimes requires that one needs to be silent so the other can be heard. The other needs to be silent so the other can be heard. And they're like dance partners. Sometimes one is leading, one is following, and the other is leading and following. Okay, maybe dance isn't the best example, but this idea of there's this mutual exchange of movement, of energy and support that you need one another. And so we know these two areas need one another, need to communicate clearly. So often, if you think, have you ever responded where you reacted to something in your life, that an event or something that happened, that you only saw that event from this place, from manas, from the mind, from taking in the information and processing it on a very basic level. And then you might have totally ignored what was happening here, what you were feeling here, what was communicating here. Or maybe you've had times where you went completely in response to an event or situation from this place, and you went completely from this place without even consulting this place. And you start to see when you've been in those situations where you only operated with one and you didn't allow them to communicate, they may have been okay, they might have turned out okay, or maybe they could have turned out a little bit better if they both had heard one another. So this dialogue between these two leads us to our inner sanctuary. And it's in this inner sanctuary, when we think of that word, we find safety, that we feel protected, we feel nurtured. It's like a harbor, coming home to a harbor, coming home. So the sanctuary needs to have these two hear one another in dialogue. And one of the ways that we can allow them to listen, to hear, and to mutually work together is a simple tool called an altar. So often the English word altar is thought of in only religious terms and faith-based terms. I invite you today to consider a new way to approach that English word altar and look at the Latin root that it comes from, meaning to elevate, right? And that's where when we see altars, we see that they're elevated. What is it that we are trying to elevate? when we are connecting here. We're trying to elevate our consciousness to connect to the self, for these areas to be heard, to have that most intimate relationship with yourself. So I invite you to consider this idea of the altar being a representative, a physical representative outwardly of what is represented within you on the inside, and it being an opportunity that the outside and the inside can come together, just like these two, to be able to interact, to be able to communicate, to be able to be heard, and to be able to listen. So in an altar that I would like to share with you, I'll give you some simple examples of one that I have. It's a place that I go to. It's my ritual. And that's the beauty of altars, is they become rituals, that it's a place where you can go and you offer a prayer. And again, a prayer is not something that has to be tied to religion and faith. Prayer does not mean to have to grip or grasp or beg or ask for something. A prayer is a simple way for us to allow our soul to breathe. And the altar is a way for us to elevate and connect to this soul and spirit within us. However you choose to describe and connect to that is very intimate to you. So in an altar, you want to first designate a place in the home that you feel is clear, that its energy is very clear, that it's a positive, high vibrational place. You want it to also be a place where you see the altar, that it's not hidden in some far off corner or room that you never visit, because if you don't see it, you won't remember to go use it as a tool. So a place that you see frequently, a place that is calming and inviting. And you don't need to have fabulous, amazing things. You don't need to go out shopping. You only need some simple, essential things. Remember, it's an outwardly expression of you. So consider the 5 elements, right? Earth. Find an element of earth in to add to the altar. It could be a shell. It could be a plant. Think of water, whether it's taking and sprinkling some water to cleanse, because water is very clearing, or if you're caring and nurturing for a plant, you're going to be bringing water to that altar. Then the representative fire. It can be a candle, some sort of wick that is lit. Air, sage, incense, frankincense, any of those where that connects to that aspect of air. And then for ether, having something that gives sound, like a bell, like a little dinging bell, anything that you have. So those 5 elements are very simple, and you add to it what moves you that you would like. So I'm going to show you, without showing you my very personal altar, I'm showing you part of my altar because I don't want to imprint what I think you should have. It has to be representative of you. I would invite you to take time before you just rush out and make a space. Clear the space, decide how you'd like to represent those 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and place in it things that you would feel would draw you, that attend to you, you know, whether there's form or formless, things that capture you, that you want, you yearn to come sit with, to be with. It can also have books. It can have books of gratitude. You can have your journal there. I use my altar to be able to sit, to breathe, to take a moment to pause, to set my intention for the day, for that moment. Go to it when I need to, when I feel distressed, when I feel in any state of dis-ease, I go to the altar. But I also go to the altar ritually every day. And if I forget, I notice that I need to go. So it's not an attachment, it's a healthy attachment, but one where it gives you time to be with you, to not forget to self-care. So here's my altar. I have my plant for my earth and water. And then I have my little Valaka, which will have oil and a cotton wick that I'm going to light. And I'm going to place an incense. And then I have some malas for doing japa, for being able to do some ways to help develop concentration and focus. I also have forms that I have in my altar that's not here present that I use that help me to connect. And then I have a picture of my father, and I also have pictures of my ancestors in my altar. And that is, my father recently passed, and I use it as a way to help connect and to grieve in a healthy way. And so what I often do is just the act of light. If you think about all the celebrations you've had in life, from celebrating birthdays to weddings to, holidays to markings of seasons and special events, what have we done? We mark it with light. We light candles. There's light is something that we as humans need to connect to. So just even pausing with your altar to light a candle every day, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, whenever you need to create that ritual. Making sure your source of light is working. And then taking a moment to welcome the breath. Observing the breath through both nostrils. Releasing through both nostrils. Welcoming in qualities of the breath that I would also like to welcome for my day. May the breath be calm, smooth, steady, fine, soft, moist, expansive. If the breath when you come to your altar is hurried, stay there long enough to allow the inhale and exhale to be equal parts and mirror one another. Knowing that the breath has its own mantra. With every inhale, I. Exhale, am. And that is what the breath is whispering to you, from your mind to your heart space, from your heart space to your mind. And then the breath connecting you to your center of you. Inhaling I, exhaling am. You may have some music or some songs or things or mantras that you might want to share or say. Sometimes I might even have simple cards or gratitudes or poetry to help me with beginning my day. And one that I have today says, seek within you the force that governs the universe and that is beyond the senses and the mind. Seek within you the force that governs the universe and that is beyond the senses and the mind. Bringing that light, that blessing to myself, and then you allow yourself a little ether with that sound. That's a Liberty Bell that my parents brought when they came from India here in the 70s, and it has stayed on their altar for sound. So I hope that gives you a moment if you saw how peaceful it was and how quick it was just for me to light a candle, to pause, to breathe, to welcome something positive to reflect on for my day. And the more often you do it and the more you make it a practice, because after all, anything with yoga it's a practice, a sustained practice with effort, consistently over time without reaping the fruits or attachments to that practice. So doing so and observing every time you come to sit, how you feel as you keep coming back. Not every time you visit is going to be the same because the relationship with you is always evolving. May you find some peace